In the fog-draped twilight of a 1933 London evening, Hercule Poirot adjusted his impeccable mustache, his Baker Street apartment aglow with gaslight. A letter, sealed with Harrow Manor's crest, lay open. An invitation to a séance at Lady Evelyn Harrow's Sussex estate. "Mon cher Hastings," he mused, alone. "This promises intrigue." The widow's request to contact her occultist father hinted at secrets beyond the grave. As Poirot boarded the train, fog thickened, veiling the countryside in mystery. A chill whispered of deception, not spirits. Tonight, at Harrow Manor, a poison would strike, and the game would begin. Chapter 1. The Mysterious Invitation. The fog clung to London like a conspirator's cloak, its tendrils curling around the gas lamps that flickered weakly along Baker Street. It was the autumn of 1933, and the air held a damp chill that seemed to whisper of secrets yet untold. In his impeccably ordered apartment, Hercule Poirot stood before a gilded mirror, adjusting his meticulously waxed mustache with the precision of a maestro tuning an instrument. His evening attire, black tie, crisp white shirt, and a waistcoat of understated elegance, reflected a man who believed in the harmony of appearances. For, as he often remarked, "Order and method, they are the foundation of all great endeavors." This evening, however, order was disturbed by an unexpected summons. On the polished mahogany table beside him lay an envelope, its heavy cream paper embossed with the crest of Harrow Manor, a sprawling estate nestled in the Sussex countryside. The letter within, penned in an elegant hand, bore the signature of Lady Evelyn Harrow, a widow of considerable wealth and even greater notoriety. "Monsieur Poirot," it began, "your reputation as a man of unparalleled insight precedes you. I humbly request your presence at a private séance at Harrow Manor this Friday eve. We seek to commune with the spirit of my late father, Lord Percival Ashford, whose wisdom may guide us through turbulent times. Your discerning mind would be most..." Poirot donned his overcoat, its silk lining whispering as he moved, and retrieved his silver-topped cane. The train to Sussex awaited, and with it, a journey into the unknown. As he stepped into the fog-drenched street, a hansom cab materialized like a specter, its driver muffled against the cold. "Victoria Station, s'il vous plaît," Poirot instructed, settling into the leather seat. The clatter of hooves on cobblestone accompanied his thoughts as the cab wove through London's labyrinthine streets. The fog thickened as they approached the Thames, its murky waters invisible but ever present, much like the undercurrents of human motive Poirot so often navigated. He considered the letter again, its wording both formal and urgent. Why him? A detective of his caliber was not typically summoned for parlor games with spirits. Lady Harrow's request hinted at something more. A disturbance, perhaps, that required his little gray cells to untangle. Had there been a crime? A threat? Or was this merely the whim of a wealthy eccentric seeking to add a celebrated guest to her gathering? At Victoria Station, the platform bustled with travelers, their faces half hidden in the mist. Poirot's first-class carriage awaited, its polished wood and plush seats a haven of comfort. As the train chugged southward, the city gave way to rolling hills shrouded in twilight. Poirot gazed out the window, where the fog seemed to dance with shadows, mirroring the veil of mystery that lay ahead. He recalled whispers of Harrow Manor's history. A fire in the West Wing, years ago. Rumors of hidden passages. And Lord Ashford's obsession with the occult, which had left a legacy of unease. The journey passed in contemplative silence, broken only by the rhythmic clatter of the train and the occasional whistle piercing the dusk. Poirot's mind, however, was far from idle. He envisioned the cast of characters he might encounter. Lady Harrow, of course, would be the linchpin. Her motives, whether genuine or theatrical, would set the tone. Her second husband, Sir Reginald Harrow, was The car halted before the grand oak doors, which swung open to reveal Lady Evelyn Harrow herself. She was a vision in an emerald gown that shimmered under the gas lamps. Her auburn hair swept into an elegant chignon. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice warm yet tinged with an undercurrent of urgency. "How delightful that you've come. Your presence honors us." Her eyes, however, betrayed a flicker of unease, as if she feared the very spirits she sought to summon. Poirot bowed, his manner impeccable. "Madam, it is I who am honored. A séance is a most intriguing diversion." He followed her into the grand hall, where a chandelier cast prisms of light across marble floors. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls, their gazes seeming to follow the detective as he passed. The air was heavy with the scent of beeswax and old roses, and a distant clock chimed the hour, its echo lingering like a warning. Lady Harrow led him to the drawing room, where the other guests awaited. The room was a study in opulence: velvet drapes, a roaring fire, and a long mahogany table set with crystal and silver. Sir Reginald Harrow stood by the hearth, a burly man with a florid complexion, his brandy glass catching the firelight. "Poirot, eh?" he grunted, offering a perfunctory nod. "Hope you're not here to debunk our fun." His tone suggested disdain for the detective's reputation, or perhaps for the séance itself. Arthur Harrow, the nephew, paced near a window, his lean frame tense, his eyes darting like those of a hunted animal. He muttered a greeting, barely meeting Poirot's gaze. Madame Zorina, the medium, occupied a corner, her flowing silks and kohl-lined eyes lending her an air of otherworldly mystique. "Monsieur," she purred, her accent vaguely Eastern European. "The spirits are restless tonight." Poirot smiled politely, noting the theatricality of her demeanor. Eliza Thorne, the maid, moved silently, serving tea with hands that trembled slightly. Her plain dress contrasted with her striking features, and her gaze lingered on Sir Reginald with an secrets. And as the guests moved to the dining room, Poirot's little gray cells hummed with anticipation. A crime was brewing. He felt it in the air, as palpable as the fog outside. The séance would be no mere parlor trick, but a stage for murder most foul. Chapter 2. Arrival at the Manor. Harrow Manor stood like a brooding sentinel against the Sussex skyline, its Gothic towers piercing the thickening fog as if challenging the heavens themselves. The year was 1933, and the October evening draped the estate in a shroud of mystery, the air heavy with the scent of wet stone and decaying leaves. Hercule Poirot alighted from the chauffeured Rolls-Royce, his patent leather shoes crunching on the gravel drive, each step deliberate, as if testing the ground for hidden truths. His overcoat, tailored to perfection, whispered with silk as he moved, and his silver-topped cane gleamed faintly under the flickering gas lamps flanking the manor's entrance. The fog curled around him, a conspiratorial veil, but Poirot's dark eyes remained sharp, scanning the scene with the precision of a watchmaker. The manor's facade was a study in grandeur and decay. Ivy clung tenaciously to weathered stone, and the tall, mullioned windows glowed with an amber warmth that seemed at odds with the chill outside. The oak doors, massive and carved with intricate vines, swung open as if on cue, revealing Lady Evelyn Harrow herself. Her emerald gown shimmered like a jewel in the lamplight, its folds catching the shadows in a way that suggested both elegance and unease. Her auburn hair was swept into a chignon, adorned with a single pearl comb, and her smile was warm yet tinged with a nervousness that Poirot noted instantly. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice a melodic contralto, "you honor us with your presence. I trust the journey was not too taxing." "Madame," Poirot replied, bowing with his customary flourish, "the journey was but a prelude to the intrigue your invitation prompted to wealth and taste. Its velvet drapes the color of claret, its mahogany furniture gleaming under the soft glow of crystal sconces. A long table, set with silver and fine china, stood ready for dinner. But it was the assembly of guests that drew Poirot's attention. Each figure seemed to occupy a distinct space, as if the room itself were a chessboard, and they the pieces poised for a game of high stakes. He catalogued them with the meticulousness of a detective whose mind thrived on order and method. Sir Reginald Harrow, Lady Evelyn's second husband, stood by the hearth, his broad frame dominating the space. His florid complexion and heavy jowls spoke of a life of indulgence, and the brandy glass in his hand caught the firelight, casting amber flecks across his tailored dinner jacket. "Poirot, is it?" he said, his voice a gruff bark, as if addressing a subordinate. "Heard you're some sort of sleuth. Hope you're not here to spoil our evening with your sniffing about." His tone carried a challenge, but Poirot merely smiled, his mustache twitching slightly. "Monsieur, I am here to observe, and perhaps to understand," he replied, his words smooth as polished stone. Arthur Harrow, the nephew, paced near a tall window, his lean frame taut with nervous energy. His dark hair was disheveled, and his eyes, shadowed with fatigue, darted like those of a fox sensing a trap. He offered a curt nod, barely meeting Poirot's gaze, and muttered something about the weather. Poirot recalled the rumors. Arthur's gambling debts had strained the family's patience, and his dependence on Sir Reginald's largesse was a source of tension. The young man's hands fidgeted with a cigarette case, betraying a restlessness that Poirot filed away for later scrutiny. Madame Zorina, the medium, occupied a corner like a figure from a Caravaggio painting, her flowing silks and kohl-lined eyes creating an aura of mystique. Her scarf, embroidered with esoteric symbols, shimmered faintly as she inclined her head. Monsieur Poirot in the manners drama. Finally, Colonel Blake, a family friend and war veteran, sat in a high-backed chair, puffing on a pipe that filled the air with the acrid scent of tobacco. His face, scarred from battles long past, was a map of hardship, and his eyes held a guarded intensity. "Good to meet a man of reason," he said gruffly, extending a hand gnarled by time. "Too much nonsense about spirits here, if you ask me." Yet his gruffness seemed a mask, and Poirot sensed a deeper resentment, perhaps tied to Sir Reginald's wartime profits, which had left Blake with little but scars. Lady Harrow clapped her hands, drawing attention. "My dear guests," she announced, her voice carrying the authority of a hostess accustomed to command. "We shall dine shortly, and then the séance. My father's spirit has much to reveal, and I trust Madame Zarina will guide us to his wisdom." Her words were met with varied reactions. Sir Reginald snorted. Arthur shifted uncomfortably. Madame Zarina inclined her head solemnly. Eliza's hands faltered on the teapot, and Colonel Blake's pipe smoke curled upward like a question mark. Poirot observed the interplay, his mind a whirl of deductions. The room was a cauldron of unspoken tensions. Arthur's anxiety, Eliza's guarded glances, Blake's simmering anger, Madame Zarina's theatrical calm, and Sir Reginald's dismissive bravado. Lady Harrow herself seemed both orchestrator and pawn, her eagerness for the séance tinged with an undercurrent of fear. Was she seeking her father's guidance, or was this a performance to mask a deeper motive? The invitation had hinted at revelations, but Poirot suspected. The true drama would unfold not in the spirit world, but among the living. As the group moved to the dining room, the storm outside gathered strength, its thunder rolling closer, shaking the manor's ancient bones. The dining table was a vision of decadence. Crystal goblets, silver candelabra, and a centerpiece of hothouse roses that seemed to bleed, rustling. "To the séance room, if you please. The hour is upon us." The guests followed, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous hall. Poirot trailed behind, his cane tapping rhythmically, his mind racing. The manor's shadows seemed to pulse with secrets, and the air was thick with anticipation or dread. As they approached the séance room, a chill wind swept through the corridor, though no window was open. Poirot's little gray cells hummed with certainty. Tonight, the veil between truth and deception would be pierced. But at what cost? Chapter 3. Whispers from the Beyond. The séance room at Harrow Manor was a chamber of shadows, its walls draped in heavy velvet that seemed to absorb the light of the flickering candles, arranged in a precise circle on the ornate mahogany table. The air was thick with the scent of wax and incense, a cloying blend of sandalwood and something faintly almond-like, which Hercule Poirot noted with a twitch of his immaculate mustache. It was 1933, and the storm outside battered the Sussex estate with relentless fury, the wind howling like a chorus of restless spirits. The room's Gothic windows rattled in their frames, casting jagged shadows that danced across the faces of the gathered company, each a player in a drama Poirot sensed was about to unfold. Lady Evelyn Harrow sat at the head of the table, her emerald gown glowing like a beacon in the dimness. Her hands clasped tightly, as if to anchor herself against the unknown. To her left was Madame Zarina, the medium, her silks flowing like liquid night, her kohl-lined eyes half closed in an expression of serene concentration. Sir Reginald Harrow, her husband, slouched opposite, his florid face betraying a mix of skepticism and irritation, his brandy glass, now refilled with port, clutched like a talisman. Arthur Harrow, the nephew, fidgeted to his right, his fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on the tablecloth, his eyes darting toward the darkened corners of the room. Eliza Thorne, the maid, sat stiffly, her plain dress a stark living. Madame Zarina raised her hands, her rings glinting as she began her invocation. "Spirits of the Vale," she intoned, her voice a husky murmur that seemed to weave itself into the room's shadows. "We beseech you to cross the divide. Speak to us. Guide us. Reveal the truths hidden from mortal eyes." Her words were met with a tense silence, broken only by the storm's distant rumble and Sir Reginald's soft scoff. Poirot noted the medium's theatricality, the slight tilt of her head, the deliberate pause, but also the faint tremble in her fingers. Was it fear, or the strain of maintaining her facade? Lady Harrow's voice broke the silence, tremulous yet determined. "Father, Lord Percival, are you with us? We seek your wisdom." Her eyes were wide, almost feverish, as she stared at the candles, their flames steady despite the drafty room. Poirot's gaze flicked to the others. Arthur's hands stilled, Eliza's posture stiffened, and Colonel Blake's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as if challenging the very notion of spirits. Sir Reginald sipped his port, his expression one of bored disdain, though Poirot caught a fleeting glance toward Madame Zorina, a look of warning perhaps. The table quivered, a subtle vibration that drew gasps from Lady Harrow and Arthur. Poirot's eyes narrowed. He suspected a mechanical trick, perhaps a wire or lever concealed beneath the tablecloth. "The spirits stir," Madame Zorina declared, her voice rising, her eyes rolling back until only the whites were visible. A performance both eerie and calculated. Lord Percival approaches. He speaks of betrayal. Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Poirot leaned forward, his mind racing. The trail, a motive as old as humanity, but who among this circle harbored it? A sudden gust swept through the room, though no window stood open. A single candle flickered and died, its smoke curling upward like a spectral finger. Lady Harrow gasped, her hands flying to her chest. "Father," she whispered. "Arthur dead." Arthur leapt to his feet, knocking over his chair, his face a mask of horror. Eliza froze, her hands clasped over her mouth, while Colonel Blake stood, his soldier's instincts kicking in as he barked, "Stay back, all of you." Madame Zorina's trance broke, her eyes snapping open, though whether from shock or calculation Poirot could not yet discern. The detective sprang into action, his compact frame belying the authority in his movements. "Calmez-vous, mes amis," he commanded, his voice cutting through the pandemonium like a blade. "No one leaves this room." He knelt beside Sir Reginald, his gloved fingers probing the man's neck for a pulse. None. The air held the unmistakable scent of cyanide, sharp and bitter, emanating from the spilled port. Froth bubbled at Sir Reginald's lips, his eyes fixed in a glassy stare. Poirot's mind whirred. Poison, administered in the goblet, during the distraction of the séance. But by whom, and how? He rose, his gaze sweeping the room. The guests stood frozen, their faces a gallery of fear, guilt, and suspicion. Lady Harrow sobbed, her hands fluttering like trapped birds. Arthur's breathing was ragged, his eyes darting to the door. Eliza's hands trembled as she backed away, her gaze locked on the body. Madame Zorina clutched her shawl, her composure fraying, while Colonel Blake's fists clenched, his scars stark against his pallor. The storm outside roared, a fitting accompaniment to the storm within. Poirot's eyes fell on the spirit essence decanter, its almond-like scent now a glaring clue. Had it been used to mask the cyanide's odor? He stepped to the table, careful not to disturb the scene, and examined the goblet. The port had been poured during dinner, but the poison could have been added later. During the séance, perhaps, when attention was diverted by Madame Zorina's theatrics. The gust of wind, the trembling table, distractions, all. But orchestrated by whom? "Madam," Poirot addressed Lady Harrow, his tone gentle yet firm. Was it the key to the method? As thunder crashed overhead, Poirot's mind churned. Motives swirled like the fog outside. Lady Harrow inheriting the estate, Arthur freed from debts, Madame Zorina threatened with exposure, Eliza harboring some hidden grievance, Colonel Blake nursing a wartime grudge. Each had opportunity, each a reason to wish Sir Reginald dead. The séance had been a stage, but for whose performance? The detective's little gray cells hummed, the puzzle pieces shifting elusively. The night deepened, and with it the sense of impending revelation. Poirot straightened, his mustache a perfect curve of determination. "The spirits may be silent," he murmured. "But the truth, it will speak." The manor's shadows seemed to close in, whispering of betrayal. And Poirot knew the game was afoot. A poison most foul had claimed its victim. But the hunter of truth was only beginning. Chapter 4. The Shadow of Death. The séance room at Harrow Manor had transformed from a stage of spectral theatrics into a tableau of mortal tragedy, the air thick with the acrid tang of cyanide and the lingering haze of Madame Zorina's incense. The storm outside raged unabated, its thunder a relentless drumbeat against the Gothic windows, as if the heavens themselves mourned, or condemned, the scene within. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the chaos, his compact frame a bastion of order amidst the pandemonium that had erupted with Sir Reginald Harrow's collapse. The year was 1933, and the detective's little gray cells were already whirring, dissecting the crime with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Sir Reginald's body lay slumped across the mahogany table, his florid face now a ghastly pallor, his eyes frozen in a stare of shock and agony. Froth bubbled at his lips, and the spilled port from his goblet stained the white tablecloth like a macabre Rorschach test. Lady Evelyn Harrow's screams had subsided into choked sobs, her emerald gown crumpled as she, with the almond-like aroma of the spirit essence decanter on the table. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind's intense activity. "Poison," he murmured, "administered with cunning and dispatched with haste. Cyanide, potent and swift. But how, and by whose hand?" He rose, his dark eyes sweeping the room, cataloging every detail. The goblet, half empty, had been Sir Reginald's alone, poured during the séance's opening moments when attention was diverted by Madame Zorina's invocation and the table's mysterious tremor. The crystal decanter of port, brought from the dining room, stood innocently on a sideboard. Had it been tampered with earlier? Or was the poison added directly to the goblet? The spirit essence vial, its contents shimmering faintly, was a glaring anomaly. Poirot lifted it carefully, sniffing its contents. The almond scent was identical to the cyanide's telltale signature. A clever mask, or a deliberate misdirection? "Madame," Poirot addressed Lady Harrow, his tone gentle yet firm. "The telephone, where is it?" Her tear-streaked face turned to him, her voice trembling. "In the hall, monsieur. But the storm. The lines are down. We're cut off until morning." Her words hung heavy, and Poirot's mind seized on the convenience of the isolation. A storm was nature's accomplice, severing communication and trapping the suspects within the manor's shadowed walls. Inspector Japp, his old friend at Scotland Yard, would not arrive until dawn, leaving Poirot as the sole arbiter of justice for now. "No one leaves this room," Poirot declared, his voice brooking no argument. He turned to Colonel Blake, whose military bearing made him a natural sentinel. "Monsieur le Colonel, you will guard the door. Ensure no one enters or exits until I say otherwise." Blake nodded, his jaw tight, and took position, his presence a deterrent to any who might flee. Poirot then addressed the others. "This is murder, mes amis, not the work of spirits. The poison was placed with intent, and Port offered no immediate clues. But Poirot folded a corner into a handkerchief for later analysis. The spirit essence vial was next. He stoppered it carefully, noting its weight. Half full, perhaps tampered with prior to the séance. "A red herring, peut-être," he mused. "Or the murder weapon itself." The room's mechanics intrigued him further. The table's tremor, the sudden gust that extinguished the candle. Tricks, undoubtedly, but requiring preparation. Poirot knelt, peering beneath the table, his fingers tracing the wood's underside. A faint groove caught his attention, suggesting a hidden lever or wire. The gust, too, defied logic. The windows were sealed, yet the air had moved with purpose. A hidden bellows, perhaps, or a draft from a secret panel? Harrow Manor's reputation for hidden passages, whispered in Sussex lore, took on new significance. Poirot's thoughts turned to motives, each suspect a thread in the tapestry of crime. Lady Harrow, the widow, stood to inherit the estate. A fortune vast enough to tempt even the most devoted spouse. Her marriage to Sir Reginald had been whispered to be one of convenience, strained by his infidelities and her obsession with spiritualism. Arthur Harrow, the nephew, was drowning in gambling debts, his allowance from Sir Reginald a lifeline now severed. His nervous demeanor suggested guilt, or fear of exposure. Madame Zarina, the medium, faced the threat of being unmasked as a fraud. Sir Reginald's scorn during the séance hinted at his intent to discredit her. Eliza Thorne, the maid, was an enigma. Her trembling hands and lingering glances at the victim suggested a personal connection, perhaps a spurned affection or a hidden grudge. Colonel Blake, the war veteran, carried a deeper wound. Sir Reginald's wartime profiteering had left Blake destitute, his scars a constant reminder of battles fought while others grew rich. The storm's howl seemed to mock their predicament, trapping them in this gilded cage. Poirot straightened, his cane tapping the floor as he addressed the group. "With atmosphere." Poirot began with the timeline. The poison was administered during the séance, when the lights were low and distractions abound. "Who poured Sir Reginald's port?" Arthur stammered. I refilled the decanter earlier, in the dining room." A clue, but not conclusive. Madame Zarina claimed ignorance, her hands spreading innocently. Eliza admitted to serving the wine at dinner, her voice barely audible. Blake growled that he'd touched nothing, his eyes on Lady Harrow. The widow wept, insisting she'd been focused on her father's spirit. A discovery interrupted the questioning. A crumpled note in Sir Reginald's pocket revealed as Poirot had examined the body earlier. He unfolded it now, reading aloud. "Beware the medium's deceit." The words electrified the room. Madame Zarina paled, her composure cracking. "A lie!" she cried. "Planted to discredit me." Arthur's eyes widened, and Eliza gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Was this a motive unveiled, or a deliberate misdirection to cast suspicion on the medium? Poirot's mind raced, the note a puzzle piece that fit too neatly, forged perhaps to implicate Madame Zorina, whose spirit essence already pointed to her guilt. Or was it genuine? A warning Sir Reginald had received before his death. The detective's gaze swept the room, each suspect a study in contradiction. The cyanide source remained elusive. Was it in the port, the goblet, or the decanter itself? The manor's isolation, the storm's timing, the seance's theatrics, all conspired to obscure the truth. As the clock struck midnight, its chime a mournful note, Poirot felt the weight of the challenge. "The shadow of death has fallen," he said softly, "but the light of truth will banish it." The suspects shifted uneasily, their secrets clawing at the surface. Outside, the storm raged on, and within, the game of cat and mouse had only begun. The murderer was close, their motive buried in the manor's shadows, but Poirot's resolve was unshakable. Chapter 5. Interrogations in the Night. The drawing-room of Harrow Manor, bathed in the flickering glow of a single lamp, felt like a stage set for a grim inquisition. The fire had dwindled to embers, casting long shadows that writhed across the velvet drapes and polished mahogany, as if the manor itself were complicit in the secrets unfolding within its walls. It was the early hours of October 1933, and the storm outside continued its relentless assault, the wind howling like a banshee, rattling the Gothic windows and underscoring the tension among the assembled company. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's center, his compact figure radiating authority, his meticulously waxed mustache a stark contrast to the disarray around him. The murder of Sir Reginald Harrow hung over the group like a specter, and Poirot's little gray cells were alight, piecing together the puzzle of poison and motive with surgical precision. The suspects sat in a semicircle, their faces a gallery of unease under the lamplight. Lady Evelyn Harrow, her emerald gown now creased, clutched a brandy glass, her eyes red-rimmed from tears, or perhaps artifice. Arthur Harrow, the nephew, slouched in his chair, his cigarette smoke curling upward like a question mark, his nervous energy barely contained. Madame Zorina, the medium, sat apart, her silken shawl drawn tightly around her, her coal-lined eyes darting as if seeking escape from suspicion. Eliza Thorne, the maid, stood near the door, her plain dress blending into the shadows, her storm-gray eyes betraying a flicker of fear or guilt. Colonel Blake, the war veteran, puffed on his pipe, its acrid scent grounding the surreal atmosphere, his scarred face set in a scowl that masked deeper emotions. Poirot's voice, clear and commanding despite his soft Belgian accent, broke the oppressive silence. "Mes amis, we are in the presence of murder most foul. Sir Reginald was poisoned. Cyanide, Swift, orchestrated this séance, knowing his skepticism. Did you seek to provoke him, perhaps?" She shook her head vehemently, tears spilling anew. But Poirot filed her reaction for later scrutiny. Next, he turned to Arthur Harrow, whose pallor rivaled the tablecloth stained with Sir Reginald's spilled port. "Monsieur Arthur, your debts are no secret. Sir Reginald held the purse strings, and they were tight, no? His death frees you, perhaps." Arthur's cigarette trembled in his fingers, ash falling to the carpet. "Preposterous!" he stammered, his voice high-pitched. Uncle was stingy, yes, but murder? I'd never. Yet his alibi wavered. He admitted to refilling the decanter in the dining room before the séance, a task that placed him near the poison's potential source. Poirot's eyes narrowed. You were alone then, with the port. Arthur nodded, swallowing hard, and Poirot sensed a thread of truth tangled with fear. Madame Zorina was next, her enigmatic presence a challenge to Poirot's rational mind. Madame, he said, stepping closer, your spirit essence smells of almonds, like cyanide. Did Sir Reginald threaten to expose your tricks? Her eyes flashed, her Eastern European accent thickening with indignation. I am no fraud, monsieur. The spirits speak through me. That vial was part of the ritual, nothing more. Yet her hands betrayed a tremble, and Poirot noted the absence of her usual theatricality, and the table's tremor, the gust of wind. Your doing, no? She hesitated, then admitted to a hidden wire mechanism, a harmless aid to enhance the séance's atmosphere. But poison? She denied it vehemently, her rings glinting as she gestured. Poirot wondered, was she a scapegoat or a cunning player? Eliza Thorne, the maid, stood rigidly as Poirot approached, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles gleamed. Mademoiselle, you served the wine at dinner, and you were near the decanter. Tell me of your relationship with Sir Reginald. Her eyes widened, a flush creeping up, but Poirot recalled Blake's chemistry knowledge from the war. Cyanide was within his expertise. You sat opposite Sir Reginald, Poirot noted. You could see all movements at the table. Blake nodded curtly, offering no more, but his clenched fists spoke volumes. A clue surfaced as Poirot reviewed his notes, the crumpled paper found in Sir Reginald's pocket, reading, "Beware the medium's deceit." He held it aloft, its words drawing gasps. Madame Zorina's face paled, her protest immediate. It's a lie, planted to frame me. Arthur's eyes darted to the floor, and Eliza's breath hitched. Lady Harrow clutched her brandy glass tighter, while Blake's pipe paused mid-puff. Poirot's mind churned. Was the note a genuine warning, or a red herring to cast suspicion on the medium? Its presence in Sir Reginald's pocket suggested premeditation, but by whom? He paced before the fire, his cane tapping rhythmically, the storm's roar a counterpoint to his thoughts. The poison was in the port, he mused aloud. But how was it delivered? The decanter? The goblet? Or perhaps the spirit essence? The vial's almond scent was too convenient, a distraction to implicate Madame Zorina. Yet Arthur's access to the decanter, Eliza's proximity to the goblets, and Blake's expertise raised questions. Lady Harrow's role as hostess gave her opportunity, and her emotional display could mask calculation. The séance's distractions, the tremor, the gust, were orchestrated, but by a single hand or a conspiracy? Poirot's interrogation revealed motives but no confession. Lady Harrow's inheritance was a powerful lure, yet her grief seemed raw. Arthur's debts screamed desperation, but his panic suggested fear rather than guilt. Madame Zorina's reputation hung in the balance, her tricks exposed, but her denial was fierce. Eliza's personal connection to Sir Reginald hinted at betrayal, yet her timidity made her an unlikely mastermind. Blake's grudge was palpable, but his disdain for poison as coward. Her paused by a window, her face pale. You flee, mademoiselle? He asked softly. She started, shaking her head. I needed air, monsieur. Her voice trembled, and Poirot's suspicions deepened. Was she hiding evidence or merely overwhelmed? Returning to the drawing room, Poirot's mind raced. The note's warning, the cyanide's scent, the seance's theatrics, all pointed to a calculated crime. Yet the murderer's identity remained elusive. The night stretched on, the storm a relentless accomplice, and Poirot knew the next hours would test his intellect. "The shadow of death is long," he murmured, "but the light of reason will pierce it." The game was afoot, and the detective's resolve burned brighter than the dying embers, ready to unravel the web of deceit woven in Harrow Manor's heart. Chapter 6. Hidden Clues Unveiled. The first gray light of dawn crept through the Gothic windows of Harrow Manor, casting a pallor over the Sussex estate that seemed to mirror the grim mood within. The storm of October 1933 had abated to a sullen drizzle, but its echoes lingered in the damp air, as if the manor itself exhaled the tension of the night's tragedy. Hercule Poirot stood in the séance room, his compact figure silhouetted against the flickering candles that still burned, their wax pooling like tears on the mahogany table. The scent of cyanide lingered, a bitter reminder of Sir Reginald Harrow's murder, and Poirot's little gray cells hummed with the urgency of unraveling the web of deceit spun in this shadowed chamber. His patent leather shoes tapped softly on the polished floor, each step a metronome to his racing thoughts. The room was as they had left it, save for the absence of Sir Reginald's body, which Colonel Blake had helped move to a nearby parlor, covered respectfully with a sheet. The table remained a crime scene, its white cloth stained with port, the goblet overturned, and the spirit essence vial glinting accusingly. Poirot's dark eyes swept the space, missing nothing. The velvet drapes, the sealed windows, the faint scratches on the table's underside hinting at mechanical trickery. The séance had been a stage, a distraction to obscure the true method. Poirot's gaze shifted to the room's mechanics. The sudden gust that extinguished the candle, the table's tremor, both suggested artifice. He examined the floorboards, his cane probing for hidden panels. A faint click rewarded his efforts. A concealed compartment beneath the table, containing a small bellows connected to a foot pedal. "Mon Dieu," he whispered, "a clever device to create the illusion of spirits." The pedal was positioned near Lady Harrow's seat, but accessible to others with a stretch. Had she orchestrated the gust, or was she a pawn in another's scheme? The bellows bore faint smudges, fingerprints perhaps, to be analyzed later. Leaving the séance room, Poirot ventured into the manor's fog-shrouded gardens, seeking fresh perspective. The drizzle clung to his overcoat, but his focus was unwavering. Near a rose arbor, he spotted Eliza Thorne, the maid, discarding a glove into a muddy flower bed. Her movements were furtive, her storm-gray eyes wide with panic as she noticed him. "Mademoiselle," Poirot called, his voice sharp yet calm. Eliza froze, her hands trembling. I was cleaning, monsieur," she stammered, but her voice betrayed her. Poirot retrieved the glove, noting a faint white powder on its fabric. "Cyanide, again." "Explain this, mademoiselle," he said, his tone unyielding. Eliza's face crumpled, tears mingling with the rain. "I handled the vial for Madame Zarina before the séance. She asked me to prepare it, but I swear I didn't know it was poison." Her words were a torrent, tinged with desperation. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Her story was plausible, but her proximity to the vial made her a suspect, or a scapegoat. "You kept this secret, mademoiselle. Why?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Sir Reginald. He was cruel to me, but I didn't kill him." A red herring or a thread of truth? Poirot pocketed the glove, instructing her to return to the drawing room under Colonel Blake's watch. Poirot's mind. Cyanide required knowledge to procure and use effectively. You despised Sir Reginald for his wartime profits, Poirot pressed. Blake's eyes flashed. He grew rich while I bled. But murder? I'd face him like a man, not poison him like a rat. His defiance was convincing, but Poirot noted the ashes as a clue, deliberate or accidental. Lady Harrow's private study yielded another find, a diary, locked but easily opened with a paperclip, a trick Poirot had mastered in less savory cases. Its pages revealed arguments with Sir Reginald over his affairs, particularly with the mysterious E. Eliza, perhaps? The entries hinted at betrayal, but also fear. Lady Harrow wrote of dark forces in the manor, tied to her father's occult legacy. Was her spiritualism a motive, or a mask for deeper schemes? The diary's final entry, dated that morning, read, "Reginald suspects the medium. I fear what he may do." A clue to the crumpled note in Sir Reginald's pocket, or another misdirection. Returning to the drawing room, Poirot assembled the suspects, their faces etched with exhaustion and suspicion. "Mes amis," he began, his voice steady. "The clues multiply, but so do the deceptions. The cyanide was concealed. The bellows operated to distract, and motives abound." He held up the glove, drawing a gasp from Eliza. "This was discarded, stained with poison. Yet it may not condemn, but mislead." Arthur's cigarette fell, his hands shaking. Madame Zarina's eyes narrowed, while Lady Harrow clutched her shawl. Blake's pipe paused, his gaze hard. Poirot paced, his cane tapping rhythmically. "The poison was in the port, delivered during the séance's chaos. The gust, the tremor, these were no spirits but human artifice. The bellows, hidden beneath, required knowledge of the room's secrets." He paused, letting the implication settle. "Who among you knew of such mechanisms?" Silence greeted him, broken only by the drizzles, his eyes gleaming. "But it hides behind shadows of deceit." He instructed the group to remain, their movements watched by Blake, whose loyalty Poirot now questioned. Stepping into the corridor, he caught a faint sound, a creak from the servants' quarters. Eliza again, or another seeking to cover their tracks. Outside, the fog lingered, wrapping the manor in secrecy. Poirot's thoughts turned to the method. The poison, masked by the incense's almond scent, required precision and opportunity. The bellows, activated during the séance, pointed to an insider, someone familiar with the manor's secrets. Lady Harrow's diary hinted at her fear, but also her control. Arthur's desperation, Eliza's hidden pain, Blake's vendetta, Zarina's precarious reputation, each was a thread, but the knot remained untied. The detective's resolve hardened. "The game is intricate," he murmured, "but Hercule Poirot does not falter." The manor's shadows seemed to whisper, urging him onward. A revelation loomed, but so did danger, and the night was far from over. The murderer's hand was close, their motive buried in the manor's dark heart, and Poirot's little gray cells burned with the promise of truth unveiled. Chapter 7. The False Accusation. The gray dawn had fully broken over Harrow Manor, its weak light filtering through the drizzle-soaked windows, casting a pallid glow across the drawing room where Hercule Poirot had gathered the suspects. The storm of October 1933 had subsided to a mournful whimper, but the air within the Sussex estate remained charged with suspicion, as if the very walls held their breath. The fire in the hearth had long since died, leaving only cold ashes, and the room's opulence, velvet drapes, polished mahogany, and crystal sconces, seemed a hollow mockery against the grim reality of Sir Reginald Harrow's murder. Poirot stood before the semicircle of suspects, his compact frame radiating authority, his meticulously waxed mustache a stark contrast to the disarray of emotions around him. His dark eyes gleamed with the intensity of a predator close. Poirot began, his Belgian accent precise and commanding. The murder of Sir Reginald Harrow was no act of spirits, but of human cunning. The cyanide was delivered in his port, masked by the almond-scented incense during the chaos of the Séance's theatrics. We have clues, the vial, the bellows, the note, but also deceptions. Now, we shall peel back the layers of this mystery. His cane tapped the floor, a rhythmic counterpoint to his words, as he prepared to test the suspect's defenses. The sound of gravel crunching outside announced the arrival of Inspector Japp, his familiar grumble cutting through the manor's silence as he entered with 2 constables. "Poirot, you Belgian busybody," he said, shaking rain from his coat. "What's this about ghosts and murder? Rural nonsense, if you ask me." His weathered face softened with a wry smile, but his eyes were sharp, ready to assist. Poirot briefed him succinctly: the poison, the suspects, the séance's distractions, and the isolated manor. Japp nodded, his notebook ready. "Right, let's have at it. But no theatrics, Poirot. Give me facts." Poirot seized the moment, orchestrating a dramatic confrontation to shake loose the truth. He turned to Madame Zarina, his voice rising with accusation. "Madame, the spirit essence vial, your vial, contains cyanide. Sir Reginald threatened to expose your fraudulence, no? You had motive and opportunity." The medium's face paled, her hands gripping her shawl. "Lies!" she cried, her Eastern European accent thickening. "The vial was tampered with. I am no murderer." Her eyes blazed, but Poirot noted a tremor in her voice, a crack in her theatrical armor. He pressed further, holding up the vial, its almond scent damning. "This was found at the table, madame. Explain." She admitted to the séance's tricks, the wire for the table's tremor, the bellows for the gust, but denied the poison. "I enhanced the experience, yes, but I do not kill." A search of her belongings, conducted by Japp's constable, discrepancy. Their timelines didn't align perfectly. Was Arthur protecting himself or someone else? Colonel Blake was next, his military bearings stiffening as Poirot produced the tobacco ash matching those near the séance table. "Monsieur le Colonel, your grudge against Sir Reginald is well known, and your chemistry knowledge. Cyanide was within your reach." Blake's scarred face reddened. "I despised him, yes, but poison? Never." He produced a letter from Sir Reginald, found in his own belongings, cutting him from the will due to disloyalty. "We argued last week," Blake admitted, "but I didn't kill him." The letter strengthened his motive, but his disdain for poison as cowardly echoed his earlier words. Poirot filed the letter away, another piece in the mosaic. Lady Harrow, questioned again, reiterated her grief. But Poirot's discovery of her diary, detailing arguments over Sir Reginald's infidelity, cast doubt. "Madame, you wrote of his suspicions about the medium. Did you plant the note in his pocket?" She gasped, denying it, but her hands trembled. Eliza, silent until now, fidgeted, her gaze flickering to Arthur. Poirot's mind churned. The note, "Beware the medium's deceit," was too convenient, perhaps forged to deflect suspicion. But by whom? The interrogation was interrupted by a piercing scream from upstairs. The group froze, Japp's constables drawing their truncheons. Poirot led the way, his cane clicking as he ascended the grand staircase, the others trailing behind. In the corridor, Eliza lay crumpled, a bruise forming on her temple, a note beside her. "I know the truth." She stirred, gasping, as Poirot knelt beside her. "Someone struck me," she whispered. "I found the decanter in the pantry. It smelled wrong." Her words sent a ripple through the group. Was she silenced to prevent a revelation? Or was this another performance? Poirot examined the note, its handwriting distinct from the one in Sir Reginald's pocket, sloppier, hurried. "Mademoiselle Eliza." Why? Because she knows, or is believed to know, the murderer's secret. Japp, grumbling about fanciful nonsense, took charge of Eliza, ensuring her safety. Poirot's gaze swept the suspects. Lady Harrow's trembling hands, Arthur's sweating brow, Madame Zorina's defiant stare, Blake's clenched fists. The note in Sir Reginald's pocket, the glove with cyanide, the bellows smudges. Each clue pointed to guilt, yet none conclusively. The decanter, now a focal point, had been accessible to all during dinner, but only Arthur and Eliza admitted handling it. Was their alibi a lie, or a half-truth? As the clock struck 4, its chime a somber echo. Poirot felt the puzzle's edges sharpening. "The murderer is clever," he murmured, "but not cleverer than Hercule Poirot." He instructed Japp to guard the suspects, his mind turning to the pantry where Eliza claimed to have found the decanter. The manor's shadows seemed to pulse, whispering of betrayal, and Poirot sensed danger closing in. The false accusation of Madame Zorina had shaken the group, but the true culprit remained hidden, their motive buried in the manor's dark heart. The night was waning, but the hunt for truth was far from over, and Poirot's resolve burned brighter than ever. Chapter 8. Twists in the Fog. The morning fog clung to Harrow Manor like a conspirator's shroud, its tendrils curling around the Gothic spires and seeping through the cracks of the Sussex estate, as if the manor itself exhaled secrets. It was October 1933, and the drizzle had settled into a persistent mist, softening the harsh edges of the dawn but doing little to dispel the chill of murder that lingered within. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand hall, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the damp, his silver-topped cane tapping softly as he contemplated the web of clues surrounding Sir Reginald Harrow's poisoning. The séance room, now sealed under Inspector Japp's orders, remained a silent witness to the crime, its velvet-draped walls and candlelit table holding secrets yet to be unveiled. His scarred face a mask of stoic resolve, though his clenched fists suggested a simmering anger. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, and Poirot sensed the truth was tantalizingly close, yet obscured by layers of misdirection. Eliza's recovery had brought a new clue to light. She claimed to have found a decanter in the pantry, its contents tainted with the telltale almond-like scent of cyanide. Poirot, accompanied by Japp, ventured to the pantry, a narrow room off the kitchen lined with shelves of preserves and silverware. The decanter, crystal and ornate, sat on a counter, its stopper slightly askew. Poirot lifted it carefully, sniffing its contents. Cyanide, unmistakable, masked by the same almond-scented incense used in the séance. "The source, Inspector," he said, his Belgian accent precise. "The poison was added here, before the port was served." Jap grunted, scribbling in his notebook. "So, someone tampered with it before the séance. But who had access?" Poirot's mind raced, reconstructing the evening. The decanter had been used at dinner, poured by Eliza and refilled by Arthur. Lady Harrow, as hostess, oversaw the meal, while Colonel Blake and Madame Zarina had been present, their movements less accounted for. The detective examined the decanter's surface, noting faint fingerprints. Lady Harrow's, confirmed by Jap's constable after a dusting of powder. "Madame," Poirot mused aloud, "you touched this recently, no?" Returning to the drawing room, he confronted her. I checked the wine before dinner," she stammered, her hands trembling. "It was my duty as hostess." Her denial was swift, but Poirot noted the fear in her eyes. Was it guilt, or dread of being framed? A deeper clue emerged when Jap, at Poirot's request, retrieved Sir Reginald's medical records from the Manor's study, where a family physician had left notes. The records revealed a critical detail. Sir Reginald was allergic to uncle, but murder, never. His admission painted a picture of coercion, but was Blake the mastermind, or another pawn? The Colonel's chemistry expertise and grudge against Sir Reginald made him a formidable suspect. Yet his disdain for poison as cowardly persisted in Poirot's calculations. Poirot ventured outside, the fog enveloping him as he paced the Manor's grounds, seeking clarity. The rose arbor, where Eliza had discarded the cyanide-stained glove, offered no further clues. But the Manor's history of hidden passages nagged at him. Returning to the séance room, he re-examined the bellows mechanism, its pedal positioned near Lady Harrow's seat but accessible to others. A faint string, nearly invisible, led from the pedal to the table's edge, suggesting remote activation. "Clever," Poirot murmured. "But who pulled the strings?" The smudges on the bellows, dusted by Jap's men, confirmed Blake's fingerprints, but also a partial print from Arthur, evidence of collaboration, or another frame. Back in the drawing room, Poirot confronted the group, his voice steady but resonant. "Mes amis, the decanter was poisoned. The incense masked the scent, and the bellows created the distraction. But the hand behind it remains hidden." He held up the medical record, drawing gasps. Sir Reginald's allergy would have alerted him, unless the cyanide was concealed by design. "Who chose the incense?" Madame Zarina shook her head, but Poirot's gaze lingered on her, then shifted to Lady Harrow. "Madame, you sat at the pedal's position. Did you orchestrate the gust?" She protested, her voice rising. "I knew nothing of such devices. My father's rituals used no such tricks." Her denial was fervent, but Poirot sensed a crack in her facade. The detective's mind churned, the clues aligning like stars in a constellation. The note in Sir Reginald's pocket, "Beware the medium's deceit," was a red herring, likely forged to implicate Madame Zarina. The glove, discarded by Eliza, suggested her involvement, but her attack hinted she was a threat. Briefly, her words tightened the noose around Arthur, but Poirot wondered if she was deflecting or protecting someone else. The detective's thoughts turned to the séance's choreography. The gust, timed perfectly with Madame Zarina's invocation, had distracted all but the murderer. The bellows string suggested a remote trigger, possible from Blake's or Arthur's position, but Lady Harrow's seat offered the easiest access. The note, the glove, the ashes, all pointed to multiple hands. Yet Poirot sensed a singular mind orchestrating the crime. "The murderer is bold," he murmured, "but not infallible." He gathered the suspects once more, their faces drawn with fatigue. "The truth draws near," he said, his eyes gleaming. "The poison was no accident, the distractions no coincidence. Someone among you played a dangerous game, and Eliza's attack proves their desperation." The group shifted uneasily, their glances darting. Lady Harrow to Arthur, Eliza to Blake, Madame Zorina to the floor. Jap, sensing the tension, stationed his constables closer, his grumble a low counterpoint to Poirot's intensity. The clock struck 12, its chime a somber herald. Poirot's resolve hardened, his cane tapping rhythmically. "The fog hides much," he said, "but not from Hercule Poirot." The manor's shadows seemed to pulse, whispering of betrayal, and danger loomed closer. The decanter's fingerprints, the incense's roll, the bellows string. Each was a step toward truth, but the final revelation awaited. The murderer was among them, their motive buried in the manor's dark heart, and Poirot's little gray cells burned with the promise of justice unveiled. Chapter 9. The Grand Assembly. The afternoon light, dimmed by the persistent fog of October 1933, seeped through the Gothic windows of Harrow Manor, casting a spectral glow over the séance room where Hercule Poirot had summoned the suspects for a final reckoning. The air was heavy with the residue of last night's storm, and the sharper tang of suspicion. Nervously, his cigarette extinguished, but his fingers twitching as if craving its comfort. Madame Zorina, the medium, had regained her enigmatic poise, her silks pooling around her, though her kohl-lined eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Eliza Thorne, the maid, sat stiffly, the bruise on her temple a stark reminder of her recent attack, her storm-gray eyes guarded, yet pleading. Colonel Blake, the war veteran, stood rather than sat, his scarred face a mask of stoic resolve, his pipe clenched tightly, its tobacco scent a grounding note in the charged atmosphere. Inspector Japp, flanked by two constables, stood by the door, his weathered face set in a scowl, his notebook ready to record Poirot's revelations. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his Belgian accent crisp and commanding, "we gather once more in this room of shadows, where Sir Reginald Harrow met his end by poison, cyanide, swift and merciless, concealed in his port. The séance was no communion with spirits, but a stage for murder, orchestrated with cunning and cloaked in deception. The truth is near, and I, Hercule Poirot, will unveil it." His cane tapped the floor, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to steady the room's nervous energy. The suspects shifted uneasily, their glances darting. Lady Harrow to Arthur, Eliza to Blake, Madame Zorina to the candle's flickering flames. Poirot paced slowly, his voice weaving a narrative as intricate as the manor's hidden passages. Let us reconstruct the crime. The poison was in the port, delivered during the séance's chaos. The trembling table, the gust of wind, the extinguished candle. These were no spectral acts, but human artifice, designed to distract. He paused, holding up the spirit essence vial, its almond scent a damning clue. This vial, meant to implicate Madame Zarina, was a red herring, planted to divert suspicion. Her tricks, the wire, the bellows, were mere gasped, her voice rising. I knew nothing of such mechanisms. My father's rituals needed no such tricks. Her protest was fervent, but Poirot's eyes narrowed, noting her proximity to the pedal. A critical clue emerged. Fingerprints on the bellows, dusted by Japp's constables, revealed not only Colonel Blake's, but also a partial print from Arthur. Monsieur le Colonel, Poirot said, his tone sharp. Your fingerprints and Monsieur Arthur's suggest involvement, or a frame. Blake's jaw tightened. I touched nothing but my pipe, he growled, while Arthur stammered, I adjusted the tablecloth, that's all. Poirot's mind churned. Collaboration or misdirection? The note in Sir Reginald's pocket, beware the medium's deceit, was another red herring, its handwriting unlike the one found beside Eliza after her attack, suggesting multiple hands at play. Poirot turned to Eliza, her bruise a stark accusation. Mademoiselle, you were struck to silence a truth. What did you see in the pantry? Her voice trembled. The decanter. It smelled wrong. And Arthur was there longer than he said. Arthur's face paled, his hands shaking. I didn't do it, he cried. But Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. Your debts, monsieur, and your access to the decanter. Motives and opportunity abound. The detective's thoughts turned to Lady Harrow's diary, its entries of betrayal and fear, and her fingerprints on the decanter. Madame, he said, you wrote of Sir Reginald's suspicions. Did you act to protect your secrets? A gasp interrupted the interrogation, Eliza rising suddenly, her voice breaking. It was me. No. She collapsed, sobbing, as Japp steadied her. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. Patience, mademoiselle. The truth is not yours to confess. Yet. His eyes gleamed, piecing together the mosaic. The decanter's poison, the insect turned to Blake. Monsieur le Colonel, your grudge against Sir Reginald's wartime profits is deep, and your fingerprints on the bellows are damning. To Arthur, your debts and your presence in the pantry make you complicit. To Eliza, your attack suggests you know too much, or are believed to. To Madame Zarina, your innocence in the poison is clear, but your tricks provided the stage. The room was a cauldron of tension, the suspects' faces a gallery of fear and defiance. Japp, sensing the climax, leaned forward, his constables ready. Poirot's voice dropped, a dramatic pause for effect. The murderer is among us. Their plan intricate but not infallible. The decanter was poisoned, the incense chosen, the bellows activated, all to ensure Sir Reginald's death. But one detail betrays them. He paused, letting the silence stretch, the candles flickering like accusatory eyes. The clock struck 1, its chime a somber herald. Poirot's resolve hardened, his eyes scanning the circle. The truth is close, he said, but danger closer. The murderer knows their time is short. The suspects shifted, their glances darting. Lady Harrow to the ring, Arthur to Eliza, Blake to the door. Madame Zarina to the shadows. The fog outside seemed to press against the windows, a silent accomplice to the manor's secrets. Poirot's little gray cells burned with certainty, the final revelation poised on the edge of his tongue. But the game was not yet won. The murderer's hand was near, their motive buried in the manor's dark heart, and the stage was set for the ultimate unveiling. Chapter 10. The Unveiling. The séance room at Harrow Manor, steeped in the fading light of an October 1933 afternoon, was a crucible of truth and deception, its velvet-draped walls and candle-lit table bearing witness to the final act of Hercule Poirot's investigation. The fog outside clung to the Gothic windows like a shroud, softening the harsh edges of the Sussex estate. Eyes flickered with unease. Eliza Thorne, the maid, sat with her hands folded, the bruise on her temple a stark reminder of her brush with danger, her storm-gray eyes guarded yet hopeful. Colonel Blake, the war veteran, stood rather than sat, his scarred face set in a scowl, his pipe clenched tightly, its tobacco scent a faint anchor in the storm of accusations. Inspector Japp, flanked by his constables, stood by the door, his weathered face taut with anticipation, his notebook poised to record the denouement. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his Belgian accent crisp and resonant. "We stand at the precipice of truth. Sir Reginald Harrow was murdered, poisoned by cyanide in his port, during the chaos of a séance designed to deceive. The clues, the vial, the decanter, the bellows, the note, were threads in a tapestry of deceit, woven by a cunning hand. But the little gray cells of Hercule Poirot have unraveled this web, and the murderer will be revealed." His cane tapped the floor, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to steady the room's nervous energy. The suspects shifted, their glances darting. Lady Harrow to the table, Arthur to the floor, Eliza to Blake, Madame Zarina to the candle's flickering flames. Poirot paced slowly, his voice weaving the narrative with theatrical precision. "Let us reconstruct the crime. The poison was in the decanter, tainted before the séance, its cyanide masked by Madame Zarina's almond-scented incense. A choice no coincidence, for Sir Reginald's allergy to almonds would have alerted him otherwise." He held up the medical record, its damning detail drawing gasps. The bellows, hidden beneath the table, created the gust that extinguished the candle, a distraction to cover the poison's delivery. The spirit essence vial, a red herring to implicate Madame Zarina, was planted to mislead. The medium exhaled, her relief palpable. But Poirot's gaze moved on, unrelenting. The note with fury. "Preposterous, Poirot! You've no proof!" Japp's constables stepped closer, ready to act, as Poirot raised a hand for silence. "Permit me to explain," he said, his tone calm but unyielding. "Colonel Blake, your grudge against Sir Reginald was not mere resentment, but a wound that festered. His wartime profiteering enriched him, while you suffered in the trenches, your post-war life ruined by his betrayal. The letter cutting you from his will was the final insult, was it not?" Blake's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his silence damning. Poirot continued, "Your expertise in chemistry, from your military days, gave you access to cyanide, a poison you procured with ease." He turned to Arthur. "Monsieur Arthur, your debts to Colonel Blake were a noose around your neck. He coerced you, did he not? Threatened ruin, unless you aided him. Arthur's hands shook, his voice breaking. He said he'd expose me, destroy me. But I didn't kill Uncle. Poirot's eyes gleamed. No, you did not administer the poison, but you tampered with the decanter in the pantry, as Eliza unwittingly confirmed. You poured the cyanide, supplied by Blake, believing it would clear your debts. Poirot gestured to the bellows. The mechanism, operated by a string you rigged, Colonel, allowed you to trigger the gust from your seat, distracting all while the poison took effect. Your fingerprints and Arthur's partial print confirm your roles. He produced the forged note, its handwriting matching a sample from Blake's correspondence found in his room. This note, meant to frame Madame Zorina, was your creation, Colonel. A clumsy attempt to divert suspicion. Madame Zorina's eyes flashed with vindication, while Lady Harrow's tears fell anew. And Mademoiselle Eliza, Poirot said, turning to the maid. You were a threat. You noticed the decanter's odd scent, and Arthur in panic struck you to silence you, fearing you'd expose him. Eliza nodded, her voice a whisper. I suspected, but I didn't. Arthur, the evidence is conclusive. Blake lunged forward, his voice a roar. You'll regret this, Poirot. But Japp's constables were swift, restraining him as Arthur collapsed, sobbing, his confession spilling forth. I didn't want to. Blake forced me. Japp, grumbling about fanciful deductions, nodded approval, his notebook filled with Poirot's meticulous reasoning. Madame Zorina rose, her silks rustling, her voice low. The spirits are at peace, monsieur. Poirot smiled faintly. The spirits, madame, were silent. The truth spoke through logic. As the constables led Blake and Arthur away, the manor's shadows seemed to lift, the fog outside thinning as if in deference to the unveiled truth. Lady Harrow wept, her relief tempered by loss, while Eliza stood silently, her bruise a fading mark of the night's terror. Poirot adjusted his bow tie, his mustache curving triumphantly. The supernatural deceives, he said softly, but the little gray cells prevail. The clock struck 2, its chime a gentle echo, signaling the end of the ordeal. Japp clapped Poirot on the shoulder. You've done it again, you old fox. But next time, less drama, eh? Poirot chuckled, his eyes twinkling. Mon cher Japp, drama is the spice of truth. The manor, once a cauldron of secrets, fell quiet, its Gothic spire standing sentinel over a mystery solved. Peace returned to Harrow Manor, but the echoes of the séance lingered, a reminder of the darkness human hearts could harbor, and the light of reason that could banish it.